Today, I would meet the kidnapper, and he would give me Alice. I wouldn't give him any other choice. A drowning man would clutch at a straw.
This daytime driving sequence is great to have in the final game, especially considering that it was a source of debate earlier on. It's fairly hard to actually see this kind of sequences, are they actually working or not, before we have the final environment, the mood, the sounds and so forth. Of course now, it is great to have in the
Ну да, что он там видео включит. Так. Максимум первый год. Надеюсь, меня слышно.
final game. It provides a very nice change of pace in the middle of episode 3, and it provides a great showcase for our technology, our views, and also it's great to see the environment that you usually see in the night, covered in shadows and in fog, in its full glory.
And you're listening to KBF FM. Folks, I want to apologize for kind of abandoning you to that looping music track last night, but I was detained. You see, I encountered a big shot G-man with an itchy trigger finger who could use a lesson in manners and a boot in the ass. Not necessarily in that order either. Now, folks, I know I'm not being very informative here, and I apologize for that. I really should just keep quiet, but so people treat me. People just
Что там есть? Какой микрофон вообще работает в этой игре? Точно на записи.
Welcome back to KBF. Hope you enjoyed that tune. Now, Doc, you were talking about life and finding that special someone, that soulmate.
Well, you were talking about that. I was saying I don't buy it.
Well, see, to me that's strange because I always pegged you as a hopeless romantic.
The feel of history and roots is somehow very present in the whole Pacific Northwest area. It's one of those things that lends the unique feel to this region. This was once a very inaccessible and thus isolated region, but in the turn of the 19th and 20th century, as railroads started getting built, it was suddenly connected to the rest of the country. This greatly benefited industries like mining, for example, because now ore could easily be transported across vast distances. Towards 1960s,
For Mott, spying on the writer on the ferry had been a disappointment. His boss had made Wake out to be something special, but Mott hadn't been impressed. He'd gotten a good long look at the wife, though, and he liked what he saw. Mott had fantasized about goading Wake into a fight, but it hadn't happened. Still, he'd get his chance to see if the writer had anything in him. He'd been promised as much.
the 1970s, mining steadily declined, but this area is still filled with all sorts of landmarks and reminders of that once blooming industry. To me, these kinds of things really matter because they are the reason behind why things are and look the way they are. So, long story short, decaying structures like old train carts and mining structures and tipple buildings are really a part of the history of this area, and that's all the reason we needed to include one of those beautiful tipple buildings as a location in the game. As many of its real-world counterparts, it serves now as a museum.
I was early. I was supposed to meet the kidnapper at noon in the main building. The coal mine was quiet. It was a museum now. I didn't want to go outside. Cops had to be looking for me. The noon sun turned the place into a sauna. The day dragged on. Different scenarios ran through my mind. Ways of how I'd torture the kidnapper to get Alice back. Or the different horrible things he could have done to her. I imagined her dead. I had no way of knowing she was still alive. It was killing me. I was running on blind hope. It was all a waste of time. The bastard never showed up.
Wake,
Where the hell are you?
change of plans. You know where Mirror Peak is? It's a big mountain north of where you are. You follow the path from the mine, you can't miss it. There's a lookout point there. I'll be waiting.
I'm through being jerked around
You
by
want to see your wife alive? Because if you do, you better watch what you say to me. Do we understand each other?
I want to talk to Alice.
Yeah, and I want the manuscript. Don't keep me waiting, Wake.
Hello? Hello! Ah! I'm gonna kill him! I had to get to Mirror Peak. It was close. Maybe closer than ever before.
Okay, now this whole kidnapping thing is a red.
When Thomas Zane fell for Barbara Jagger, it happened fast. She was young, vibrant, and beautiful, full of life. He had never been a very happy man, and without any seeming effort, she had changed all that. Zane felt good for the first time in his life. Everything she did was another piece of a jigsaw puzzle he hadn't even known he'd been missing. And best of all, she made the words flow, strong and sharp. She was his muse.
Of course. It's just an attempt to manipulate Wake and to get him to deliver the manuscript. The so-called kidnapper Mott Well, he doesn't have Alice, he doesn't know where Alice is, and neither does Dr. Hartman, the guy who's hired Maud. But they do know that Wake will do anything to get Alice back, so you know, they use her. They're nice people like that. The problem is that Wake doesn't have the manuscript at all. He doesn't know where it is, he has a couple of pages, but of course, that's not it. So, they're lying to Wake about having Alice, and Wake is lying to them about having the manuscript, and nobody has much of anything. It doesn't end very well for Matt, you know, who is going to get his in a couple of minutes, or you know, a little longer. And Dr. Hartman doesn't have such a great day either. You know, what can I say? Karma's a bitch.
The only way to reach the hillside ahead was to go through the building. I had to find a way to avoid electrocution. Some of the taken retained echoes of their former selves, but these were just the nerve twitches of a dead thing. Nothing remained but a shell covered and filled with darkness. In most cases, these puppets were enough for the purposes of the dark presence. But for anything more elaborate, as with the writer, it was different. It needed his mind. And so rather than taking him over completely, it merely touched him. There was no way the flashbang grenades were standard power company equipment. I stared through the bars of the jail cell. Barry stood behind me, swaying on his feet, looking as ill as I felt. Agent Nightingale stood on the other side of the bars with Sheriff Breaker. Nightingale had a stack of manuscript pages in his hand. He seemed unhinged as he gloated. "Well, I've got you now, Raymond Chandler. It's all here. All the evidence, including conspiracy to murder a federal agent." Without warning, the headache stabbed at my brain. Alice? Alice! I'm losing it. I gotta get out of here. The hunters were big, thick-set men, confident and at home in the woods. They were feeling good, running on beer, ghost stories, and camaraderie late into the night. It did them no good, as they were taken by the dark presence, sucked deep into a darkness far worse than any ghost story they ever told or heard. Even behind the closed doors and curtains of his grimy room at the Majestic, the local motel, Nightingale could feel the locals' eyes on him, the unrelenting pressure of their judgment. He forced it out of his mind. For all he knew, they could all be under Wake's spell already. You do what you have to do to get the job done. He took comfort from the bottle in his hand. Please, he thought, just let me get through this. this mine shaft in order to
The
go
guys who
on.
did this
Maybe
mine
the
puzzle,
machinery could help me
Antti and
get
Tiago,
down.
did a really amazing job here. This is again one of the cases where we started with a very, very low-key design requirement, just something to occupy the player for a moment. But with iteration, looking at what works, what not, we actually got this amazing sequence which does what it's supposed to do. It looks complex, it looks imposing, but it's very intuitive to play, and I hope you actually enjoy going through it.
Lightning flashed behind the windows of Cauldron Lake Lodge. Tor Anderson laughed and held the steel hammer above his head. Nurse Sinclair was trying to calm him down without success. Tor grinned madly and shouted, "My hammer's up. Here's a friendly poke from Molnir, wench." He brought the hammer down with all his might on Sinclair's head. "We're on a comeback tour, baby."
In a similar vein to how we handle the different types of terrain with biotypes, we have a preset system for weather styles as well. The game engine lets us control numerous parameters, things like cloudiness, wind, rain, and also lighting parameters, things like color, intensity, and blooming, to create truly stunning weather effects. Using this technology, we have created a palette of ready-made weathers that can be called upon at any time. So really it is weather on demand at the push of a button. Each level has its own, or sometimes many, different styles of ambience, and so their own mood.
Maud had checked all of Stucky's rental cabins. There had been no sign of the Wakes. It was dark when he'd found their car parked at the end of the road by Cauldron Lake. It made no sense. They must have taken a wrong turn, but there was no sign of them, and the car had been there for hours already. Frustrated, Mott stood on the rotten ruin of the footbridge that had once led to Diver's Isle before it sank beneath the waves years ago. The boss wouldn't be happy. could see Cauldron Lake. I thought I could make out the spot where the island and the cabin had been. There was a light near it. It had to be a boat. I was close now. I had to get there fast. I dreaded what I would find. I tried to hold on to Alice, but her form melted away. I was losing control. Dr. Hartman stood in her place. I wanted to hit him, but my arms were jelly. He smiled. It was a reassuring smile, and I hated him for it. I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period. Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now.
Wait! Are you? Wait!
Hey, I'm here! I'm coming!
No! Get away! Sorry. Please, wait! The boss didn't know who he was messing with. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know. We don't have his wife. We don't know where she is. She's probably drowned. We just said we had her to make him play ball. You see? To get him writing for us.
Previously on Alan Wake, I'm hunted by the law.
Sheriff, Wake's running. I'm giving chase.
Are you seriously telling me that writer just took out my deputies?
A thriller I supposedly wrote is coming true. The genre of the story seems to be shifting. It's turning into a horror story. I was told that Alice had been kidnapped, but that was a lie.
We don't have his wife. We don't know where she is.
Her purported kidnapper was eaten up by the dark presence before it attacked me.
Alan, shh, baby. It was just a nightmare.
Alice. There you go, Alan. Hartman, I fell.
I had to give you a sedative. Don't fight it. You went through another rough period.
What?
Right now, it's very important that you stay calm. We don't want you to have another episode. You're a patient at my clinic. Have been for a while now. The shock of your wife's death triggered a mental illness.
No, you lied.
You're suffering from various symptoms of undifferentiated schizophrenia.
Bastard.
It's okay, Alan. Just let go.
I felt groggy. Whatever Hartman had bumped in me was making me numb.
As far as the bad guys go, Dr. Hartman isn't the main villain here, but he's probably a little more interesting than the Dark Presence. He's a very smart guy, and he knows a lot about the Dark Presence and Cauldron Lake in general. He kind of presents himself as a pop psychologist to the stars, but that's kind of a ruse. He just wants creative people in so he can exploit them. With Wake, of course, he resorted to a little more drastic measures. You know, he pretended to have kidnapped his wife, fished him out of a lake, you know, tried to convince him that he was schizophrenic, and it doesn't end very well for him, but, you know, it's a valiant effort anyway. We have a lot of backstory for this guy, and I'd love to do a little bit more with him in the future, but, you know, of course, we don't exactly leave him feeling very well at the end of this one.
Now, why don't you come with me? We'll reacquaint you with my clinic and go over everything you might have forgotten. Little walk and some fresh air? Yes, it will do you good. This corridor is for patients. Most of them aren't here right now. Jack took them out for a fishing trip, except for the ones who are particularly vulnerable, of course. I encourage creativity as a part of the recovery process here at Cauldron Lake Lodge. I specialize in treating artists.
I bet you do.
Splendid, Alan. I honestly believe we can get this thing under control if we work together. This way, Alan. Now, Alan, from past experience with you, I know I need to get right into the heart of the matter as quickly as I can after an episode. So I'm just going to say this. Alice is dead.
No.
You're in a very vulnerable state until you understand and accept this. Alice drowned, and you couldn't face that. You're suffering from hallucinations, paranoid delusions, unusual thinking, an obsession about light and darkness, a feeling that everything revolves around you, your thoughts and dreams. Your mind has constructed an elaborate fantasy scenario in which your writings are affecting reality. She has been kidnapped and supernatural forces of darkness are trying to stop you. We go this way, Alan.
I wasn't ready for another shot, so I went along with it. He had to be lying. But under the influence of the drug he had given me, I had to fight not to believe his words.
Cauldron Lake Lodge is the residence and place of practice for Dr. Emil Hartman, who uses it as a sort of a nursing home and also a place of inspiration for artists he treats there. Built in the turn of the century, it is an imposing building, hewn from large timber and heavy stone, with a steep shingle roof to weather off even the heaviest of snowfalls. The starting idea for this location was the real-world hotel of Timberline Lodge that they used in the movie Shining, but following the typical style of these buildings and the heavy materials used in the construction, it quickly evolved into a thing of its own. Story-wise, the most important location in the game, Cauldron Lake, is inspired by the real-world location of Crater Lake in Oregon. It's a vast lake formed from a volcano thousands of years ago in a massive eruption. It's truly a breathtaking place that anyone interested in such things should definitely visit. In the game, the location, this Cauldron Lake, has actually had two notable eruptions. One that originally formed the lake, and then another which took down a small island in it, along with its cabin and even a person, a diver called Thomas Zane. The place is said to hold an ancient power, and it's not without reason, as you will find out playing the game.
It seems there's a storm coming. Funny, I don't recall there being a mention of that in the weather forecast. Well, no matter. This way. Follow me. Alan, what I'm telling you is good news. Right now, we're in control. Every time you have a relapse, it gets more and more difficult to resurface from the dark depths of your imagination. Not surprising, considering your profession. Imagination is what you work with. After all your nightmares, this should come as an immense relief to you. If it doesn't, why that? Because I'm lying? Or because you don't want to admit that you're not well? It's very natural for you to think of me as your enemy. It's part of the illness.
I let him talk. Hartman obviously loved his own voice. His words echoed madly inside my head.
But I can't
I dug my
do it
nails
by
into the
myself.
palms of my hands to stay
You need to
focused.
work with me. Once you accept that, we can begin the journey towards your recovery. Come along. Let's go inside. Here's the entrance to the office wing. That's for staff only. You were impressed by my trophies when you first arrived here. I do love to hunt. The great outdoors, man versus nature. It's wonderful stuff.
Pretty damn wonderful, yeah.
Scary, scary, scary.
Emerson.
I'm a real bad dream, mister. You should be afraid of me. Don't want to run into me in the night, that's for sure.
Please, Emerson. Mr. Wake is confused enough as it is.
Yeah, you'd like me to go away so you won't be scared. But you can't just decide what kind of dream you have or when you have it.
Emerson.
Okay. Sorry. Boo.
That's Emerson. We're actually making some progress with him, I'm happy to say. He works on video
Elbow
games.
strike.
It's trash, of course, but it does involve
Get him
some
to the head.
small creative effort, which makes him receptive to my therapeutic methods.
No kidding.
La 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 la.
Oh, hello. I've painted you.
Alan, please, this way. Come, Alan, this way. Now, you might have noticed the typewriter in your room. You've been writing as a part of the therapy. As soon as you feel up to it, you should continue.
My rheumatism's killing me. There's a storm coming. Oh, what a storm.
I hope it wipes this place off the face of the earth.
And these two are the Anderson brothers, Odin and Thor. They had how should I put this? A heavy metal band in the 70s and 80s called Old Gods of Asgard. They even adopted new first names to complete the image of Viking gods. After the band broke up, they lived on a farm nearby. They are, well, in advanced stages of dementia. They're well cared for, TLC and all that. There's nothing more that can be done. I'm afraid that the rock and roll lifestyle has left its mark. Oh, that won't do. I'm so sorry to cut this short for now, Alan. The power has been acting up. I'd better go check on it. We'll continue this soon. Meanwhile, when you feel up to it, return to your room and try to write. It really is for the best. Don't you think?
I'd like to bash his head in with a hammer.
Oh, he'd love to fish out our secrets, but he has no clue. He's not crazy enough. Not crazy like us, Sonny. Yeah! Being crazy's a requirement, Sonny. Who else could understand the world when it's like this? It takes crazy to know crazy.
That's the sanest thing I've heard in a while.
Zane! You're all right, Tom. Hey, we like him, don't we, bro? He's gotta go to the farm.
The Anderson Farm. Valhalla!
We wrote it all down, lest we forget. A crash course. All you need to know to get your head right. You need to find the message.
Here, Sonny, here's something for you. Gave me a rash, but I kept it safe from these bastards.
Zane could feel the poems, taking form, shaping things. As he experimented, he imagined he could almost feel the power surging through the keys of the typewriter. It exhilarated him. But there was fear, too. If not for his young assistant Emil, he would have given it up. But Emil convinced him otherwise. He too had a way with words. My head was clearing up, or according to Hartman, I was sinking back into the fantasy. I was convinced he was lying to me about everything. Crazy or not, the Andersons made more sense.
He's not overreacting or anything.
Well, he's the boss.
I may need a hand here later on, Birch. The storm's bound to make you-know-who jumpy. You know how they
The
get.
doors were locked. Hartman and the nurses would have keys, but there was no way to get my hands on them.
I'll do that, Birch.
Something's wrong. I'm not myself. It's hard to think that there's a shadow inside my head. I can only focus on writing. Everything else is a blur. I'm trapped in this cabin. Have been for days, but it's always dark outside. My editor is real. I saw her again. She's not human. It's not human. A dark presence is wearing the old woman's face. She was covered in clinging shadows. There's a hole in her chest where her heart should be. I think I've made a horrible mistake. I don't think I'm any closer to saving Alice. It's been lying to me, using me to get the story it wants, and the story will come true.
But I don't see nightmares anymore because I'm too scary for...
Hartman had mentioned that the power had been acting up. Maybe that was the reason for the generator and the work light on the balcony. The generator hadn't been activated, and there was no key. Hartman wanted me to write. I knew I couldn't, but I figured I should just play along for now. It was the only thing I could do with Nurse Birch watching me like a hawk. The white glare of the blank page in front of me hurt my eyes.